All right, so let's start with some breaking news that's come in, where the Israeli army has warned the Iranians to evacuate from the industrial area of Isfahan. Ahead of the attack, the IDF has now issued an urgent warning to the Iranians located in the industrial zone in the Isfahan area ahead of the Israeli airstrike. The IDF statement says that in the coming minutes, the Israeli army will stage an attack on the military infrastructure in the area, and the citizens should immediately move away from this area. This, of course, is the latest bit of information that is coming in, where the Israelis are now issuing an urgent warning to the Iranian people who live in the industrial zone of Isfahan, the historic city of Isfahan, ahead of what Israel claims will be an airstrike. Now, the IDF statement further says that in the coming minutes, the Israeli army will stage an attack on the military infrastructure of the area, and the citizens should immediately move away from this area. All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got Mr. Alex Strayman, who's the CEO and the Jerusalem Bureau Chief of the Jewish News Syndicate. He's joining us live from Jerusalem. Mr. Strayman, thank you very much for joining us here on WION. Now, in the wake of what is unfolding at this moment in West Asia, it appears to be an all-out war that's been triggered by the Israeli and the American attacks that took place earlier this morning. And now this latest report that has come in, where the Israeli military has asked people in Isfahan's industrial area to vacate. Are we to now expect that these hostilities and this phase of strike and counter-strike will continue for days to come?
I think we can definitely assume that this is going to continue for days ahead. I don't know if it'll be weeks, but I think we can certainly assess that it will be days. Many of the Israeli contacts have suggested that this will take place for at least 4 days. Isfahan is the site of the nuclear facility that was believed to house the 60% enriched uranium of Iran. It was a site that Israel did not strike as fiercely during the 12-day war back in June, and perhaps at this time the Israeli military clearing out Israeli civilians for a strike that might threaten the integrity of that 60% enriched uranium, which could cause damage to civilians living in the area.
All right, now, you mentioned that the Iranian nuclear facilities that were stuck in the 12-day war that took place last year. Now, from the statements that have come in both from Donald Trump and also Benjamin Netanyahu, where Donald Trump earlier this morning very clearly stated that once the American operation is over, he wants the Iranian people to rise up and take charge of the government. In your assessment, what really is being planned here? Is it to try and degrade Iran's nuclear capabilities, or is Washington and Tel Aviv now trying to bring about a regime change in Iran?
Well, I think it's both. Certainly, the Israelis and the United States don't want there to be any nuclear capacity within Iran. They don't want there to be any ballistic missile capacity in Iran. But at this point, the assessment is that it's not only the weapons that are dangerous, rather it is the people with their fingers on the button. And specifically, as the regime has proven that it did not take the hint from that June 12-day war, and that it sought, in fact, to continue to enrich uranium, to restart its nuclear program, and to speed up the production of ballistic missiles. I believe that both the United States and Israel recognize that it posed an existential threat to different countries in the region, and that it is the people that have developed these weapons that need to be stopped, especially in the face of domestic protests.
Interesting. Now, nuclear program is what you mentioned. Now, over the course of the last many years, and in fact many decades, the current Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, even before he became the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, had been stating that Iran is just weeks away, 3 weeks away, 2 weeks away, 1 week away from acquiring a nuclear weapon. So it's been, quite honestly, decades since this allegation has been made, and still Iran is nowhere near to getting a nuclear weapon. In your assessment, how real is the threat that the Iranians can actually end up getting a nuclear weapon?
I think the threat is real, and I believe that there's a threat right now that even if they haven't crossed that full threshold of over 90% enriched uranium, that they may have been moving with the 60% enriched uranium they had to create a dirty bomb or something of the sort, and perhaps that Iran already has a nuclear weapon that's deliverable. I do believe that there was Israeli intelligence that dictated to Prime Minister Netanyahu that it was a now or never scenario. We've already seen how Iran used every tool at its disposal to attack the state of Israel via its terror proxies and ballistic missiles, and I think that we know that they've been developing nuclear weapons, and Israel has to take the nuclear threat from Iran very seriously.
Right. Now, in the counterstrikes that the Iranians have carried out, there are reports that they tried to target Tel Aviv and Haifa, amongst other areas in the state of Israel. As you're joining us from Israel, could you give us a sense of, has there been any damage in these attacks that the Iranians tried to stage as a counterstrike?
There has been some damage. There were direct strikes both in Haifa and in the Israeli city of Bnei Brak, which is just outside of Tel Aviv. At this point, the emergency services are reporting that 3 individuals have been treated for injuries related to shrapnel, not from direct hits, but rather from intercepted missiles that cause shrapnel to fall to the ground and can cause significant, but what is considered to be generally light injuries. And then the emergency services have treated another 86 people that have been injured while running into sirens. There's been sirens all day, basically in Israeli cities, including here in Jerusalem, where I was staying with my family. We had to go several times into the bomb shelters for sirens from incoming ballistic missiles.
Right. Now, last year, when the Israelis fought this 12-day war with Iran, Iranian missiles and drones managed to pierce through the Israeli air defense systems. There were a number of targets that were struck by these saturation attacks that the Iranians carried out. In your assessment, what lessons has the state of Israel learned in trying to ensure that these Iranian missiles and drones do not pierce through the Israeli attacks, and how differently is Israel prepared this time around?
Well, Israel has a pretty sophisticated missile defense system. They have the Arrow 3 system, which can intercept ballistic missiles up in atmosphere. But what they also found out during the war, the 12-day war by force, was that they actually had to employ, and they were successfully able to employ the Iron Dome system, which was able to intercept the Qassam rockets being fired from Hamas and from Hezbollah. They intercept missiles at a much lower altitude. They can be used to intercept ballistic missiles, but in the case of cluster bombs, which the Iranians have used in recent attacks, sometimes even if they are intercepted at lower altitudes, that can still cause damage if the ballistic missile is able to shatter into different directions.
All right. Now, also looking at how things have played out, this is, of course, day one of the hostilities. You mentioned that this is something that can go on for the next few days, at least, if not weeks. How long is Israel prepared to stay in this contest? Because clearly the objective appears to be regime change. How long can Israel actually fight a war of this scale?
Well, we saw that Israel was willing to fight a war that went at least 12 days before the president was reported to have stopped the battle. I think that Israel proved that it can go for a long period of time, but this time around it has the backing of the United States. The Air Force of the United States, much more powerful than the Israeli military. We don't yet know the scope of the U.S. attack, but we do know that something accordingly, approximately a third of the American deployable Air Force in the region. So, it's believed that the two powers together can affect military objectives much quicker than Israel could alone.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned that last time around it was Israel that was carrying out the attacks, and this time the Americans are with it. But last time as well, the Americans were there to try and shoot down some of these Iranian missiles and drones. And according to reports that appeared within the Israeli media in the later part of the war, by day 9 and by day 10, nearly about 35% of the Iranian missiles and drones were able to pierce through the Israeli air defense systems because the Israelis had run out of interceptor missiles. If this were to turn into some kind of a shooting contest that could drag on for days, how much of the Israeli interceptor arsenal do you think is there to be in this game where the Israelis can protect themselves from these incoming barrage of Iranian missiles and drones?
Well, certainly this is one of the considerations that Israel had regarding the timing of this war. No doubt that Israel was restocking its ballistic missile intercepts significantly in between that 12-day war and the time they decided now to launch this attack together with the United States. But we also see that the United States has brought significant military assets and naval assets into the region, and those assets can also be used to protect against ballistic missiles incoming. We also saw that the Prime Minister of Great Britain announced that the UK had deployed military assets in order to defend allies in the region, and that includes interception of missiles. So certainly this is something that Israel has taken into consideration. Also, the ballistic missile production, right? So Israel doesn't want to wait until Iran has hundreds, if not thousands, of ballistic missiles. They wanted to attack as they saw that the ballistic missile production was increasing, but before they had reached the capacity where they could overrun Israeli missile defenses.